Freelance journalist Tim Stackpool is in Australia with an update on the disaster for us. Good morning, Tim. We've been tracking this story for the past 2 weeks. What's the latest in Queensland right now that you can tell us?
Good morning, Todd. Yes, that's up to 22 towns affected in Queensland right now. That's Australia's second largest province. And I can tell you that since this disaster, if I could call it that, started about November 30, 10 lives have been lost so far. Just going through some of those statistics you mentioned, about 1,000 homes have been abandoned. That city of Rockhampton you talked about, there's 75,000 residents in that city, and all of those residents have been affected. Most of the town is inundated. That town is going to be cut off at least for the next 10 days. And those floodwaters, look, they talked about them peaking at almost 10 metres. That's almost 30 feet. So it is significant, these floodwaters, Todd, and most of the authorities think that they are probably only in the middle of this now. And as some of the floodwaters begin to subside in other towns, of course, they're expecting the floodwaters to peak even higher in Rockhampton very soon.
Tim, what can you tell us about the 3 deaths that were reported this morning?
Yeah, well, these are actually due to people leaving it a little too late to leave home, Todd, and we are warned of this. Of course, Australia is also affected by fires, and the same situation applies. If people are going to leave, they need to leave their houses quite early before the floodwaters come up so early, and the same with the fires, before fires get too close. But in this case, these people tried to leave their homes. They're driving across flooded rivers, and these are rivers that are carrying enormous amounts of water, Todd, and unfortunately they can get a third of the way across, halfway across, and their cars are just swept away. Some people make it out, and in fact a couple of the people who were in the cars with those who died, which you've reported, a couple of them did escape the vehicle, but others unfortunately succumbed to the floodwaters and were swept away. Some of them were found kilometres from where their cars were swept off the road.
And Tim, one official in Queensland is describing this as a disaster of biblical proportions. The cost could be $1 billion or more. How is the Australian government responding to the situation?
Yeah, the Australian Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, has said that it is going to cost millions and millions of dollars, and that is just in the cost of the direct damage caused by the floodwaters, Todd. But even I can tell you this is going to have a massive effect on Australia's economy. And even today, at the supermarket today, I noticed signs up in the fruit and vegetable section saying that certain types of produce were unavailable today because of the floodwaters in Queensland. So this is going to affect, day-to-day Australians, those who don't live in the flood areas. But even the Great Barrier Reef, these floodwaters will flow off the Queensland coast into that most famous Australian coral reef. The pesticides and the fertilisers from the runoff will also affect those coral reefs. So this is going to have repercussions for a number of years.
Tim Stackpool joining us on the line from Sydney, Australia today. Thank you very much for talking to us today, Tim. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, Todd, anytime.